my future and like where, my career is headed, where this is headed, when this will happen for me. And I realized that it's because of this need to keep things on a timeline that I've curated for myself, that in reality, all of that is not within my control. And once I've realized that, and once I've made the conscious effort to just surrender to
Yeah.
divine timing and just
Yeah.
do what I can and make the steps towards the intentions that I've set, but also not be so attached to my expectations, um, is when things have flowed in the most organic way possible. So welcome to the Tea Live. My name is Jasmine Kylene, and on the Tea On, we like to just sip tea and talk about things. This show is in collaboration with Well World TV, a modern TV network sharing educational and inspirational content. So I'm really excited to be just partnering with them and just having my content be on their platform because I love their message. And today I'm here with none other than Jonathan de Lavelanet. I didn't even clarify that's how you say your last name, but I'm assuming that
That
is.
was the best first try I've ever heard, probably in my life. I've had some good ones,
Got you.
but usually it's not that close. That was real good.
Thank you.
It's
I appreciate it. Well, how is it?
it's de Lavelanet.
Oh, beautiful. That's even more romantic, honestly. But you're a public speaker, you're a musician, you're an artist, and overall, you are just a really eloquent and well-spoken, like observer of life, I would say. You were just the perfect person overall to speak to about this subject that I think, A, yes, it's very timely, but I think B, what I was telling you earlier was that I think it transcends time a bit. I think that surrendering control and easing with the flow of life is something that everybody should take into account, and at least observe and be a bit self-aware as to how much we grip onto our control. So to give you context on our conversation today, this global situation that we are currently in is definitely, if anything, teaching us many things, but one of them is to be that some things are just sort of out of our control, and it's a matter of surrendering to that and the beauty that you'll find in surrendering to that. But I think that it's something that is going to be in our lives after this. It was something that was in our life before this, and so it's important to bring awareness to the fact that a lot of the global anxieties that we face and that we feel have a lot to do with the fact that as humans, kind of by nature, it feels like we are attached to control. So I have some questions that I'm also gonna, like I said, contribute to a bit, but I kind of just want your take on your experience with surrendering to control, how tied you think it is to maybe anxieties that you've experienced, and how moving forward we can try to just, I don't know, surrender more. So you
Yeah.
ready?
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. So the first question that I have is going to be in regards to what's going on right now. But how has this global situation, in which we really have no control, how has it positively and negatively affected you?
I'd say first and foremost, I appreciate you for addressing it in a way that doesn't continue to brand it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just addressing it for a situation, being another situation that we experience in day-to-day life. I mean, we go through things every day.
Absolutely.
Um, as far as how it has affected me positively and negatively, I think what's really going to come from this is a stronger sense of community.
Yes.
That's something I see on the horizon. I see it already. People are outside walking, maybe not necessarily talking to each other. I mean, a few people will, but some people are more standoffish. The thing is, it's kind of been that way for some time. Everyone has their own comfort level when it comes to interaction with
Mm-hmm.
another person, especially a stranger. But I think over time there will be more
Yeah.
connecting, more in-person connection. As far as how it's affected me affected me adversely. I think for me, I'm someone that really loves to be intertwined with my social uh, groups, the
Mm-hmm.
people that I interact with, connect with, and I love face-to-face interaction. So although I said, yeah, there'll be more community, it's community in your immediate area,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas those who I'm connected to or with are scattered all about.
Right.
So I may not, I don't really get to see them in person, connect with them like I have been. It's much more limited. So I think that's one of the negative effects. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't see it as the worst thing ever though. I see it as just another thing to adjust to and allow the time to unfold as it will.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, even this is,
Mhm.
we're not in person, but I think even this is cool to be able to still somewhat see a person, kind of feel them more than just talking or texting.
Yeah.
It's a benefit. So
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my conversations have been they've had so much more weight to them because I don't know, I've been more present and more purposeful and intentional in my conversations. But yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that I kind of had to surrender the control of having just a routine that I was already accustomed to. And I think having my routine sort of taken from me was in my eyes it was negative. And I think now I've sort of adapted to the new routine that has been born out of, needing to be indoors. And I love my new routine. So it's like what I think was negatively affecting me as far as not having control over the situation has turned into a positive, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of not
so
having.
many.
What'd you say?
There's so many. There's
Yeah,
so many.
yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, just on a global scale, I think that we're going to be more unified than ever, more self-aware than ever. But just like personally, having to surrender the control of what I knew life to be for a while has opened a lot of doors as to like just what life could be in other circumstances. And it's, I don't know, it's been a positive thing for me.
Adaptation is another one.
Yeah.
Just learning to adapt. Sometimes people gotta have to force themselves to adapt, or a situation will force them to adapt. In this case, it seems like it's more a situation that it's kind of putting us in a position to have to
Right.
adapt
Exactly.
to changes. So,
Yeah, and so that kind of brings me to what I was going to ask next was that why do you think, like as far as adapting goes, why do you think people are more resistant to that? Why do you think that we hold on to just control in general?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was getting a call.
No worries. I was asking that why do you think that us humans are more attached to control, and why do you think we're more resistant to adapting and to change?
Oh, it's funny we're talking about this because this is something I was recently discussing with my family,
Mm-hmm.
and why do I think control is something that we hold on to? I'm in the process of figuring that out, but I think to kind of talk through it, I think pride is one of those things that gets in the way of surrendering control to a situation or another person. Fear, fear of like, I mean, we're instinctively surviving, or we're instinctively creatures that are trying to survive, right? We do everything we can to try to survive. So in allowing something to change the way that you want it to do something or you felt something needed to be done, it's kind of, it affects how you perceive, the outcome of it. So
Right.
for example, like if you were to tell me, if you're going to tell me don't go outside at all because you don't want to get infected, at some point I'm going to need to go get food, and I have to make a decision to, you know, survive. And if I abide by what you're telling me, I may starve, right? I may run out of food. I may need to go eat or figure out some way to eat. So at that point, the mind kind of creates this fear of, I'm going to starve. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to do anything. But instead, what I'm learning is that instead of uh, allowing that authority to kind of throw you off, accept what is being put in place, or accept what is happening and find a way kind of around it, but still abides to that control. So
Yeah.
instead of going out to the grocery store and finding and potentially getting, I don't know, affected or whatever, maybe speak to my neighbor who's healthy and hasn't been sick and maybe can offer me something or something of that nature, but just finding a creative way to
Basically.
adapt.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it is also, as you mentioned earlier, it's fear based as well. I think people are scared sometimes to surrender to what the natural play of events will be. I think it's a fearful tact to have everything sort of the way that you want it, because that's kind of how nothing can go wrong. And so when things don't go the way that you plan them to, which is the natural order of things, um, yeah, I think it can like just, I don't know, ignite our like survival instincts, and fear kicks in. So I think to be fearless is to surrender.
You mentioned natural order. I think that's a very important term here because the natural order of it is the divine. It was already written, right?
Right.
It's if it's meant to happen, it will happen or not. And understanding that helps a lot.
Very freeing.
It helps a lot
Very, very freeing. It's
in just being able to just be, to persist in what it is that you want, but then also knowing when to just accept.
right, right. And there's a balance to that, which is literally the next question that I was going to ask, which is that when you find yourself like as a spiritual person or even just anyone going through life, there's this notion that in order to manifest or to bring in the life that you want or the things that you want, you need to set a clear intention for it, and you need to really put your focus on that and be specific about what it is that you want and feel it and live it. And then there's this other notion of just being and surrendering to what is meant to be. So how do you find the balance between just setting a clear intention and just allowing what happens to happen?
I have no idea.
Does anybody though?
Yeah. I mean, I lean way more towards just being and flowing with it.
Mm-hmm.
My struggle has been setting clear intention.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just take a situation or take an outcome and make the best of it. That's what I've always done. I've always done
Right.
it. I wasn't the boy in school, or to say, no, I want the blue one. Like, no, I take whatever one. I'll take the red, I'll take the green. I'm gonna do with that what I do with it.
Right, right.
But how do we do that? I think for me, I have to focus more on setting clear intention. I'm not sure what it's like for you. What is it? What is it like?
What do
Do
you
you
mean?
find yourself leaning more towards flowing with things or setting intentions? And then,
Right. So because the reason why I asked the question is because it's something in my life that I'm sort of trying to find the middle ground in as well. And I think that maybe, I guess we all are, but um, I've been reading a lot and learning a lot that in order to bring the things in that you do want, it is important to be more specific and not be so elusive. But then at the
yeah,
same time, I think this whole notion of like surrendering control would lead to the fact that if you just kind of be, what arrives is what's meant for you and you'll make do with it, you know? So it's kind of like, how do you find the middle ground? I think personally, you sort of set the intention and then you let it go and not, hone in and focus on it overactively. I think maybe like is kind of a way to have both.
let it go or strive for it, work towards it, but
But not be so fixated
or
on
you
it.
fall short, it's okay, try again. Or you surpass it, great, set a new intention. Is that what you mean?
I guess, yeah, exactly. Or just because I think when people get too overactive in what it is that they're setting the intention on, they can just revolve around it and it could be what they eat, breathe, and live. And I think that is a bit resistant to surrendering to the flow of life and surrendering to control. I think if you're like so honed on something, you're not really just kind of letting it be. But you should also still work towards it. So my thing would be to kind of like have that direction, have that path, but not be so fixated on it to the point where you don't see, I don't know, other opportunities along the way.
I mean, the beauty is that it's a constant work in progress.
Right.
So, you know,
So you
continue to
are on
strive.
the free will side than you are on the intentional side.
What's that?
You find yourself more on the free will side than on the intentional side.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, I definitely roll with the punches. Like
Right.
that's, I roll with it, and
Which is a beautiful thing. And it's what we're talking about now. It's, it's good.
I can say I'm happy. I could say that I'm actually happy,
Yeah.
but I do see room for improvement. One thing that I'd like to implement more in an effort to set clear intention is using smart goals. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So my brother taught me this. Smart goals it's an acronym. SMART. Uh, Anytime you're setting a goal, your goals must be specific, measurable, uh, attainable. Uh, See, I don't even remember. That shows how much. What is
Reasonable.
it?
Rational, maybe? I don't know.
It's specific, measurable, attainable. RT. T is time constraint, right? So there should be a time, and the R is something else. But if you Google it, you'll be able to see SMART goals is something that's used in a lot of companies.
Right.
It enhances productivity, but it also allows them to identify when they've accomplished their goal.
It makes it,
So yeah, and everyone can also be on the same page with it because they know when it's due, they know uh, exactly what needs to be done,
yeah.
and they know how to measure if they've reached that milestone.
Good.
So SMART goals is definitely a cool little um, tool to use when setting clear intentions with things.
I'm totally going to use that. I actually really love that. And I'm
Yeah.
visual, so like I would like to see that. That's awesome. So the next question I have, I'm really curious to know, is if you can recall a certain time in your life or specific event that you think maybe would have gone a bit easier had you not been resistant to the whatever control you were needing to surrender in it.
Uh, I'd say my relationship. I'd say my career, but also my relationship with my family in a way. So my career, because anytime I'll set a goal with something or I want to accomplish something, let's say I want to make 10 songs in a year, right? I'm so nitpicky with things that I'll either take, forever to finish one song, or I won't get to it at all, or yeah, pretty much that. I'll take forever to finish to finish one song, just because I'm not surrendering to the idea of failure, right? I'm
Right.
not surrendering to the idea of it not being received well by other people.
Right.
With my family, I mean, my mom, my brother, they always give me advice on things, and they, are trying to teach me from a place of a loving place.
Right.
But because I see things my own way, or sometimes even it's like their input clashing,
Right.
sometimes it's even that. And I respect them, so I try to take their advice to the best of my ability. But what'll happen is, instead of surrendering control to their input, or to what their needs are sometimes as well, it's my view that overpowers, and then will ultimately create a conflict. Or yeah, it'll create a conflict, and then I got to deal with that, or
Right.
we have to deal with that. So in many ways, surrendering control could be beneficial, but like, I allow it, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Career would be mine as well, I would say. Um, that
Also,
because basically for when you have a career that it doesn't have like a set trajectory, I would say. Um, and what I mean by that is that, like, for instance, if I would have taken maybe more of like a STEM major, and I would have like pursued this many years in school to be, a doctor, and then, there's kind of like written steps to take, but for something that's more just not as like structured, there's a lot that is out of my control that would kind of drive me crazy in terms of like, data, like the number of views that you get, the number of comments that you get, the number of streams or whatever. And I think I allowed that to stress me out and affect me when it was so far out of my control. And then when I kind of realized that, and I came to the fact that all I can do and all I have control over is making content that matters to me and that is intentional and within my purpose and purposeful, um, and kind of let go of the fact that the numbers and who watches it really has nothing to do with me, as I have no control over it. That's when numbers and the people who watched it started to be responsive, because I think when you kind of let go of it and you focus on what you can control and what makes sense to control, that's when you'll kind of align with the flow of things. So yeah, you have to be self-aware.
an interesting thing to add to this is that no matter where you are, let me take a step back.
Yeah,
I'm going to put this out there, and then I'll use that point to answer it.
gotcha.
I think our generation as a whole very much despises authority,
Right.
which is control,
Yeah.
right? Which is why you see a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of us striving to do our own thing, which I think is great. I'm not against it. But my brother and I, we talk about this all the time, our brothers rather,
Mhm.
and they always talk about, you got to start from the bottom. Like, you got to start, you know, under someone,
Yeah.
some people, because in whatever field it is, because through that, then you're able to, if you're under a good teacher, you're able to learn the ins and outs of whatever field that you're in, right? And that's with anything. That's in your family, but I'm talking about careers here, right?
Right.
It's funny how we don't, as a generation, and this is a generalization as well, but it's funny how the millennial group does not like control or like authority, because in anything you do, in every aspect of your life, you're going to have to answer to someone.
Right.
Whether it's your boss at your job, your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend at home, your landlord, or your consumer base,
Right.
right? For you in making the videos, you have to answer to your consumer base if they're not feeling your content or if they think something was disrespectful or whatever,
Right.
right? You're going to have to answer to them at some point.
We're very resistant.
So, what's that?
I said we're very resistant to that when it's kind of inevitable.
Right.
Right.
And understanding that you are in service to everyone.
Exactly. Totally.
So,
yeah, a huge point to make. I think our generation is definitely, we have authoritative issues for sure, which in turn has pushed us to do things on our own, which, like you said, is not at all a negative thing, but maybe we could use some practice on, I don't know, seeing the
don't get me wrong, we're great.
Yeah. We're doing fine.
It's just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. I think we all, it's, I can like think of every phase in my life, like school wise too, where that's been present. But yeah, it kind of is what it is. So last two questions.
Okay.
The second and the last one being, how much of our anxieties do you think derive from our need to control? Whether it's kind of obvious or not. Because things can underlyingly be, oh, that's a control issue.
How much of it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't answer that for everyone. For myself,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot. First of all, I'm not a very anxious person. I don't get anxious easily. Certain situations, I'll get anxious.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm, uh, and I think I'm at a point where I'm overcoming it too. But it's usually when I'm having discussions with my family. Again,
Mm-hmm.
my family is really where a lot of the things that I have to work on comes from.
Right.
Because I've had a interesting upbringing, and so I think that contributes to how I view my family structure and how I interact with them and
Right.
everything. But I think it just goes back to me wanting to be in control of my own view and my own choices, and having a constant um, challenge or a constant uh, like contradicting view,
Right.
and having to decide, should I listen to this person because they're experienced and they're wise and they've been around for longer than I have, or should I listen to myself because I'm fresher in this world and I know the time we're living in more than they do. At least in my mind I do.
Right.
And but most importantly, my decision is going to leave me the most at ease, because I know I made it and I'm willing to accept whatever comes from it.
Exactly.
Whereas if I make a decision based off of what I was told and then it goes wrong, I'm like, God, I shouldn't have listened. you know,
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, why did I listen to it? I should have just listened to myself.
Right.
So, as far to answer the question, I don't think a lot of it comes from I don't think a lot of anxiety comes from the need to control, but
That's good.
actually, scratch that. I do think most of it comes from. I do think most of it comes from the need to control, because I'm not naturally anxious, and so when I do feel it, it's usually in those situations where my control is being challenged.
Right, exactly. I think we don't realize that it derives from our need from control until we'll trace it back. Because, like, I know for me personally, I'm also overcoming my anxieties, but um, I do know that when they arise, so much of them have to do with like my future and like where, my career is headed, where this is headed, when this will happen for me. And I realize that it's because of this need to keep things on a timeline that I've curated for myself, that in reality, all of that is not within my control. And once I've realized that, and once I've made the conscious effort to just surrender to divine timing and
Yeah.
just do what I can and make the steps towards the intentions that I've set, but also not be so attached to my expectations, is when things have flowed in the most organic way possible. So I've realized that even if I didn't realize it, intermittently everything has kind of been attached to just control.
Do you care to share one of your
My
goals for your
um
career?
right, well, I always had this like thing of wanting whatever I hosted or whatever I produced or whatever to be like on cable television, and it would always be so like just hard for me to accept the fact that like a lot of that, either you kind of have to know somebody or you're gonna have to work on it for years in order to get to there. And I think that controlled me for a while. It controlled my like willingness to even put myself into this if I didn't see the goal clearly as something that was tangible and reachable. But like now, surrendering to it, I've fallen into what streaming is now. And streaming, I've been able to reach way more homes than I would have if I did do cable television. So I think by me surrendering like this tunnel vision of what I wanted, I was able to find something that made more sense for me. So yeah. And there's more, but I mean, whatever, we'll do that. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked you, because I wanted to understand how you would feel if you didn't accomplish that goal, but it seems like you're already accomplishing it. So
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's also other things like, for example, like I've been single most of my life, and sometimes I do, and I'm very comfortable with that. I love myself. I'm independent. However, I do think, well, when is the time that that's going to organically happen for me? And I think by just kind of surrendering that and knowing that when it's meant to happen, it will, has allowed me to blossom in my own self-love. But I do think that I still have an attachment to the outcome that I do expect, because I expect that eventually I will find my person and I will get married and have children. And I think that if that were to not happen, I would still be disappointed. But I think I'm wasting a lot of energy in focusing on that as opposed to just sort of trusting that when it's meant to happen, it will,
Right.
So, yeah, that's that on that. So last question is, if you have any advice or exercises that you would tell somebody who was maybe wanting to overcome their need for control.
Meditation is helpful for me. Meditation helps me a lot because it puts me in a state of calm.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm calm, I listen more. And when I listen more, there's less rebuttal. I battle less.
Right.
Right. Or I'll know when to kind of stand for something and when to just go with the flow on something and just accept what it is.
Yeah.
And that's so important with interpersonal relationships.
Absolutely.
It's so important because you want one thing, I want another thing. At some point, we have to come to an agreement or an understanding. And if I'm so stuck on my high horse on something when it's really not that either important, or it's not that important to me,
Where you can,
or the outcome of it isn't detrimental, then why am I really arguing it?
right.
Why am I battling it? And that's something to look at. That's something to be conscious of. So meditation helps me.
Yeah.
Listening
Mm.
through the meditation, it helps me learn to listen. Listening is another thing. And then I think something that I do naturally, that I've always really done, is, it's a great one. Take your car one day, maybe not right now, but one day, the day that we're back to normal, whatever, take your car and drive around and just get lost. And do not use your GPS.
Mm.
Do not use your GPS. Get lost. I mean, obviously, you get to a point where like you're completely lost. You have no idea. It's getting late.
Yeah.
Use your GPS, but challenge yourself not to use your GPS. Either find someone who can help you in a safe way, obviously, or really just challenge yourself to kind of say, where am I? All right, and follow that intuition, right or left. That's how I learned how to drive. I learned to drive from young doing that.
Wow.
I would ride with my mom. We would just get lost. She'd be like, you know where we are? She knows where we are. I don't. Sometimes she didn't, but I never did. I was young. And we would get lost. And it's something I do on my own till this day. I just get lost sometimes. And I'll find so many new cool things. Then I get to take my friends there. And it becomes this new aspect of my life because I just let go. So,
I absolutely adore that. That is like my favorite thing that anyone, and I'm like so excited to do that.
yeah.
And you bring up a good point, because what that does is strengthen your intuition, which we haven't even really mentioned that, but I think that's huge for surrendering control, because I think when you have an attachment to control, it's something that derives from your ego. And I think that when you strengthen your intuition, you'll be more, it'll be easier for you to let go, because I think you know that you can always fall back in your intuition. Your intuition will tell you, all right, it's time to turn left, or you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not something that you need to be so attached to, because it'll drive
Right.
you. It's really dope. I'm totally gonna implement that. That's amazing. Um, just like take a random exit and like see what happens, and you will discover a lot of beautiful things, which is a metaphor for life, really. Just kind of take a random exit and you'll figure it out. But yeah, everything that you said, I 100% agree with. I think I also wanted to add in that as far as like control and relationships go, for me, I've always had an issue with vulnerability. And eventually I realized that that was something that was also attached to my need for control. I think I had a need to control how I was seen and how I was perceived and how much of me was seen and perceived. And being able to surrender to that alone and my control of that has helped me.
Right. Yeah. No, I can see that.
Yeah, totally.
Controlling the potential for pain or for hurt.
Exactly. Everything can be disguised as a need for control for something. So yeah. And as far as advice would go, I 110% would say meditation. Meditation has been huge for me. And I think the reason why it's helped me so much is that it puts you in the present moment. And I think when you're in the present moment, you're not concerned about what's happening in the future, what's happened in the past, which both things are connected to our need for control. I think we want to control outcomes of things. So in our heads, we're in the future. When if you're just in the present moment and you're here, none of that matters, and it kind of alleviates a lot of that. So if anybody who's watching this doesn't meditate or hasn't meditated yet, I think that's like the first step, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 minutes if you can. Just
Yeah, you'll
sit
grow.
quiet, no phone. I do lately I haven't been doing it, but there was a point I was doing an hour a day. I did or excuse me, 2 hours a day.
Oh,
I
wow.
did a 10-day silent retreat
I would love to do that.
in Shelburne Falls in Massachusetts called Vipassana. I did it. It was 10 days of silence. You don't speak to your peers. So it's like a course.
Mm-hmm.
Over 100 students in there. It's all free. It's all you have to fly there. It's in Massachusetts,
Right, right.
but every food is free, lodging is free.
Oh, that's awesome.
You live kind of like a monk for 10 days.
Right,
No speaking to anyone. Of course, if you have questions about the practice, there are teachers there that you
right,
can ask in private,
right,
but there's no communication with the other students, not even eye contact, not even holding the door. It's just you. And it was very helpful in getting that momentum going for meditation moving forward. So
right, right. Yeah, that's
that you can look into.
that's totally its own challenge in surrendering control, like surrendering to the urges that you would have to communicate or to what you
Oh
know
yeah.
is normalcy.
I'll tell you my experience with that.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, no, but totally. But yeah, but thank you so much, Jonathan. It means the world to me that you were open to having this conversation. I just want anyone who just watches to take away that there is, and I think we've demonstrated that there is no perfect way to do this. We're always going to be finding the middle ground, and we're always going to at some point find out that whatever resistance and whatever anxieties we have, they may or may not be tied to our need for control. So I think just being self-aware and at least recognizing it is already huge. We're still human at the end of the day, but I think making the active effort to surrender the outcomes of things, whether that be, what you eat for the day or the trajectory of your career path, it's all little steps and human things. So I appreciate you. Let's see what outro I had. So thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to visit wellworld.tv as well as their Facebook, because I'll be doing interviews like this live every Sunday at noon. And also visit Lala Luna TV for more conscious content. And
La la luna. Check it out.
if you have to plug, please go ahead.
Next time I need some tea, okay? Next time you gotta let me know we're drinking tea.
For the Tion.
You though.
Thank you. Do you want anyone to follow you on anything or?
Not really. If you want to. At Beige, like the color beige, Beige, Warrior, like the warrior, on every platform.
Perfect.
And yeah, I just really hope people can take something from it and apply it. So thank you for having me, though. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you for being here. Bye.
Bye.